Good morning and thank you very much for joining us. I am Yori Folani. Hope you had a great weekend. Okay then, Monday, business, the beginning of a new week. And the buzz all around town, it's in our province. We're talking about information here, that's what we do, communication, and it's all over the place. From what everybody has seen, efforts by the administration, as it were, to clamp down on the flow of information. So many different instances. That, at least, is the story that's going out. And we're very fortunate to be able to have, as it were, the sort of information chief of the Federal Republic. I'm talking about the Honorable Minister of Information, Alhaji Lai Mohammed. Thank you, Mr. Minister, for coming on the program.
Good morning.
Well, as I said in my intro, it looks like your ministry, and indeed you in particular, because you personalize, information flow in the country. There's this whole matter of an attempt to curb the freedom of speech, and this comes out of a number of examples that are out there. Let me, for instance, ask you, first of all, that whole concept, are you making any fresh efforts to stem the flow of communication, such as has been in existence from when you were not in government until now?
The simple answer is no. There is no directive from government as to suggest that I want to curb freedom of speech in any manner. But we must be clear in our minds that hate speech is not free speech.
This is a problem to a lot of people, because it then becomes a matter of what exactly then is hate speech? If the fact that I don't agree with government and I want to say so, and I do say so, is this administration about to say that that therefore is hate speech?
No. The hate speech is defined clearly under the Terrorism Act of 2010, which was not even passed into law by us, as any statement which is capable of intimidating the populace, any statement which is capable of setting one section of the country against the other. So this is very clear. We are not even talking about hate speech bill. We're talking about Terrorism Act, which is already has already been enacted before we came to power.
And so it's no more than that. No additional efforts, because from what you say then, things are not really different from the way they've always been.
No, not at all.
Let me then give you a number of examples. You've just helped us understand what hate speech is, the law. We have a law out there, and it seems to me you also therefore agree that we have these laws on our constitution, on our books. So there hardly is any need for any additional law in that regard. That's the position of your ministry.
Yes, that's the position of this government. It's like, look at the TSA, for instance, the Treasury Single Account. Had been a policy of government before we came in, but no government had the kind of political will we had to implement it. And what we are saying now is that with the prevalence of hate speech today, we will prosecute anybody who runs foul of the Terrorism Act. That's what we are saying. We're not making new laws, and we're not out there to hunt anybody or to prosecute anybody, but we make a clear distinction between hate speech and freedom of speech.
Maybe you can then clarify some areas. It is out there that the regulatory body for broadcasting, in Nigeria, radio, television, so the word goes, has put out a communication that there shall be certain changes. For instance, that from a certain date, all TV programs will be recorded, will have to be recorded, which in any case has always been the case. It so happens that that is not new. But because in the whole buzz that we're hearing now, this being mentioned again, I just wanted to ask you, when the NBC is reported to have said you cannot say certain things on air, you can only have certain limited time for phone calls, tell me about that. Has your ministry, how did that whole confusion come about, if it is indeed confusion?
I think this is another perfect example of fake news.
Fake news.
Absolutely fake. There is no directive whatsoever from the NBC or any regulatory body that phone-in programs or questions will be limited to X number of questions, or that will be screened.
But they say by October 1st, for instance, it's going to sort of flow into, shall we say, law, that you can't ask more than, you can't have more than 5, for example, phone-ins per question.
You see, at times, these things are a combination of mischief, laziness, incompetence, and unprofessionalism on the part of even the media, with due respect. Did anybody bother to just pick up his phone or her phone and call the DGNBC that we heard this is a new directive from the NBC? Please confirm or deny.
But it was very widely reported. It was headline news.
Oh, it was widely reported that I had $1.2 billion too in my account. Does it make it true? Now, let me tell you what really happened.
Okay.
There was a meeting of NBC and some operators in the Southwest zone, the Lagos zone in particular.
Okay.
On what is the way forward on, sanitizing the broadcasting industry.
Okay.
And on their own, the operators, broadcasters, made certain suggestions, which was deliberately leaked to the media and attributed
by NBC by mischief makers?
By mischief makers, and which is now being attributed as a policy statement from the NBC. But I sit here today as the Minister of Communication. I say no such directive ever emanated from the NBC or from the Ministry of Information. We've been very clear from the beginning on our position, on even the social media. And I think I've been on record several times to have said that we would do nothing to stifle the freedom of press, freedom of the media. However, we would call on the media to self-regulate if they don't want to self-destruct. And that's where, that has not changed.
Well, I guess a lot of people are going to be surprised that because the press is awash with all of these stories, and here you are sitting down in front of me and saying that not one word of that emanated from the NBC.
And I challenge,
and so it's mischief.
And I challenge anybody to come out and say, this statement was issued by Mr. X, Directorate Y of NBC, or from Ministry of Information. I challenge anybody. You see, this is the issue we are talking about. Hate speech, fake news, misrepresentation, and falsehood. And it's deliberate.
Which is not the same as critical reporting, if you want to put it that way.
No, as a matter of fact, it's not responsible journalism at all. You see, if I hear a thing like this, the first thing I will do is that I will phone either the Minister of Information, phone the NBC, and say, is it true? But of course, we live in a season of fake news, season of hate speech, season of falsehood, where somebody somewhere would make up something. Nobody, would bother to check. And you'll be surprised that even so-called reputable, mainstream media will now seize on that and start commenting on it. Columnists will start on it, and nobody will, would do the basic thing. Is this true? What is the source of this story? We could have all have saved ourselves a lot of embarrassment if only we took that simple step of taking our phone to ask.
Which is the professional thing to do, actually.
I guess so.
If you say all the buzz, all the hullabaloo about NBC is doing this, NBC is bearing its fangs, if you say there's absolutely no truth to that beyond the regular work NBC has been doing and there are no fresh directives, you've explained that it was a meeting in there that was mischievously distorted. How about the whole notion we're hearing again that the military, for their part, are now going to be monitoring social media, for instance? we're looking out for what, as the story puts it, is hate speech against both the government and the military in particular. Any comments on that?
I think it's a routine job of any security apparatus to monitor, utterances, to monitor speeches. It does not mean that they are going to arrest anybody if they do so, but it gives them a good lead into exactly, what people are saying, what they are thinking, and they're able to measure the pulse of the nation, the temperature and the like. Most countries do that. Probably the fact that it was announced is probably the strange thing. That's my own take about that. But it's not to say that, they are now going to arrest you today or they're going to prosecute you today. But I think part of security is to ensure that you have, you feel you have the exact pulse of the citizenry. I don't see that as a, curbing freedom of the press.
So, are you then concerned, just having explained that from your perspective, and indeed, in fact, from what you're saying, absolutely no truth to this whole idea that government is clamping down on freedom of speech in the, in the public space. Are you concerned, nevertheless, about the critical reporting that might go out, that is going out, either in newspapers, radio, television, especially, for example, in relation to the economy? A lot of people say that the economy, for instance, they haven't seen any movement at all, any improvement at all. We were hungry before this administration. We're still as hungry now. The ordinary Nigerian is saying.
You see, this hate speech, this fake news, is part of a deliberate attempt to obliterate the giant achievements of this government. And I'll start with the economy. Now, by the second quarter of 2014, mark my words, 2014, this country was already on the road to recession. Recession is not new to any country. Small fact, naturally, economies are in cycles. There will be a period of boom and there will be a period of bust. But what wise governments do when there's a boom, they save, they invest in infrastructure, and they pay off their debts, at least. But unfortunately, in our own case, when we had this boom, we squandered it. We did not save any money, we did not invest in infrastructure, and worst of all, we did not pay our debts. So the debts kept mounting. When this government came in 2015, and it's instructive for people to know that by 2015, the decline had gone from 5.9%, that's our GDP, in 2014, to 3.5 in 2015. So it's been steady decline. And by the second quarter of 2016, we inevitably and officially entered the recession, which means that we had recorded two negative quarters, two negative, two growth, two quarters of negative growth. Now, and unfortunately, this particular recession became what you call stagflation. Stagflation is when a period of low economic production coincides with inflation, which will also, of course, lead to unemployment. Now, but the question is that, what did we do when we came in? This was the situation we met. And I'm proud to say that this government arrested the decline. And by the third quarter of 2016, the recession bottomed out. And between the fourth quarter and today, we've been climbing out of recession, to the extent that we've even surprised the World Bank and IMF. And the second quarter report, 2017, is that we recorded 0.51% negative, as against the 2.34%, which was in same quarter in 2016. Now, how did we achieve this? The chief driver was the non-oil sector of the economy. The non-oil sector of the economy grew by 0.72%, driven principally by agriculture. Despite all the contraction in the economy, the year of 2016, agriculture grew by 4.3%. And by the second quarter of this year, it's grown by 3%. Also, solid minerals, which has grown also by 5.36% all through 2016. And in the first quarter alone of this year, has grown by about 45%.
45%.
Yes, I'm talking about the mining sector.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
mining sector. Now, if you look at other indices of the economy, take capital inflow. Capital inflow peaked at $20.7 billion in 2014 and went to $9.3 billion by 2015. And after that, it's been recording, negative growth. But we're happy again to say here today that second quarter of 2017, we recorded an extra $884 million US, which is about 95%, increase on the first quarter of capital, inflow. Here we're talking about, foreign direct investment. We're talking about portfolio investment and others. Now, look.
With these figures, which sound, well, some of them very modest, but then again, this is the way these things are.
Right.
Do you think that's part of the reason why, as of now, it hasn't translated, and perhaps it not being effectively reported, might be that's the way you see it?
Right. You see?
That's why the ordinary man in the street has the notion that nothing has changed yet, even though the figures, such as they are, statistics being what they are, the man is saying, I hear all of that, but Minister, I have to go to the market, and I know that it's a struggle to buy pepper, to buy tomatoes.
Look, you see, we concede that despite all this improvement, the price of food is still high. We concede that, but the government is again addressing the issue by looking at monetary, fiscal, and trade policies to bring down the cost of food. But what Nigerians don't appreciate is that, but for the prudence, discipline, and commitment of this government, the situation would have been far worse. Similar countries that inherited the same kind of economy as ours today are in economic crisis of humongous proportion. I don't intend to stay and name such countries, but we all know them. Now, but it's precisely because of our prudence, the physical reforms we brought, the discipline, that we are able to achieve what we've achieved. People have forgotten that before we came in, this government had not been paying its debts, been paying our debts regularly as and when due. People have forgotten that before we came in, contractors were not paid for 3 years. And that is why today you had abandoned projects. Now, what Nigerians need to know, when they say we've seen nothing government is doing, it's because they don't even understand the scale of what government is doing.
Yeah, but
I'll take the Kano Maiduguri road, for instance. It's 560 kilometers. Now, there's a street, my street, Isaac John, it's under 3 kilometers. It took the government 2 years to rebuild it. So you can imagine what it's going to take 560 kilometers of road. Or if you take the Enugu-Port road, it's 220 kilometers. Or the Lagos-Ibadan Express, which is about 141 kilometers. But one thing I can assure you that, one, we have been able to go back to site. We've been able to re-employ people who have been laid off from job. Be able to create a new economy. And people have been able to tell us, we know that travel time in those portions of the roads that we have, we finished, travel time has reduced.
If we don't see all of these, Mr. Minister,
you see what I'm saying is that
can we not blame you and your ministry and other information managers for not carrying us along before the crisis of public opinion, and as you have explained at the very top of the program, what you refer to as fake news, you're reacting to it now. Why weren't you carrying us along?
Yori, I was here before you a couple of months ago when I reeled out these achievements, if you remember. But the cacophony of hate speech, cacophony of fake news, have tended to drown these solid achievements of government. I remember I was here before you, Yori, and I spoke about our social intervention programs. We today has even grown bigger. As of today, we have employed over 200,000 unemployed graduates under our Empower program. Today, we are feeding 3,063,000 pupils all over Nigeria in 14 states. Today, that same home feeding program has employed 36,000 cooks within those 14 states. As I speak to you today, 120,000 people have benefited from the government's entrepreneur, economic program, which we call JEEP. As I speak to you today, over 30,000 households receive conditional, cash transfer. We keep updating this every time.
Well, maybe you, but not you personally, maybe the whole information machinery is not as consistent as the hate speakers to sort of, so that, because everybody, even as you came in here, even as you came in here, so many people along the way, before you arrived at the studio, had said, Mr. Minister, we're very concerned. You want to gag everybody. Social media, so it can only be because...
You see, Yori, there's no day, as I speak here, that one minister is not out there speaking about these achievements, but they don't want to hear.
Okay.
For instance, tomorrow, we are going to commission another fertilizer blending plant in Auchi. This government will make it 12, fertilizer blending plants that would have put into use in the last, few months. And that has created an extra 50,000 jobs for people. We'll be able to crash the price of fertilizer from 11,000 to 5,500. We've been able to save 60 billion naira in budgetary provision and $200 million in foreign exchange. We sing this every day. But we use every opportunity, every platform to say this. But no, they will not listen. And you see, again, they talk about power. And
I was going to go there. I was going to say power is the bedrock of everything.
And I would say that no government has done what we done in power. And I'm going to give you facts and figures, Yori. When we came in, number one, let's make no mistake about it. Power today is a private sector initiative. Before we came in, GENCOs, generation, distribution had been privatized. Transmission had been contracted out. So what does the minister do? He simply administers the Power Reform Act of 2005 with NERC, the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission, being the regulator. Now, when we came in, 29th of May 2015, power generated was 2 2,690 megawatts. I repeat, 2,690 megawatts. Out of the 10th of August, we're generating 6,070 megawatts. So on the 10th of August, we transmitted 6,070 megawatts. Now, so people who are talking about...
That's more than a double
absolutely
increase.
So for people who are now talking about power and say the government has failed, don't understand these issues. Number one is that we do not generate power. We don't distribute power. But how did we achieve this phenomenal growth in power generation? One, through the intervention of government, be able to, peace has returned into Niger Delta. With peace returned in Niger Delta, it means there's less vandalization of pipelines. It means that we have time and opportunity to repair those that have been vandalized. So it means there will be more gas for gas-powered plants. Two, we've also been able to do a lot of work on transmission in Ikotepene, in Katampe, in Abuja, in Odogunyo, in Ikorodu, in Kano, in Enugu. And that is why we have been able to improve. And of course, again, there's the 701 billion naira, which was injected, what you call the payment agreement program, because we realized that it was the liquidity problem mostly that did not enable the GENCOs to be able to pay the gas producers. So we made available this guarantee that if you supply gas and you produce power, the government will pay you the difference between what you are able to pay and what you should pay. And that has improved the situation. But you will not ask me, how come that if you produce 6,070,
exactly. More than double what you meant,
yes,
but still people are complaining?
Because the discos, unfortunately, don't have the capacity to take on what we produce and to distribute.
Is that being addressed? Because this is exactly what government is all about.
And like we say again, don't forget that discos are private, initiatives. They are private companies. Now, why are they unable to take and distribute what we produce? Many reasons. One, many of them have equipment which are outdated and which ought to be upgraded. Unfortunately, again, many of them were undercapitalized. And here, you probably cannot blame them, because when they went into privatization, the dollar was X. Today, the dollar is Y. But again, they also have some other problems that revolves around governance.
And was it a choice between the devil and the deep blue sea? By which I mean that before government enabled, couldn't they have checked out these parameters and seen that, look, we need to go in this way, but they simply don't have the capacity. So beyond doing it in name, what we want is effectiveness. They're not going to be able to deliver. Could government not have seen that?
See, don't forget that we came in to meet an already completely privatized power sector. We had two choices. One was to scrap it, and would have been sending a very wrong signal to the international community. The other is to intervene and manage it. And this is why we embarked on what we call the power recovery program. And that is why we have introduced the 701 billion payment assurance guarantee. Mm-hmm. That is why we have intervened in what's going on in the Niger Delta. That is why today we are even now saying that, look, anybody that wants to generate between 1 and 100 kilowatts does not even need a license. You only need to inform the NERC. But if you want to generate between up to 1 megawatt, then you need a license. And we are now saying that we can license more generating companies, we can license more distribution companies, while at the same time helping these ones to grow. So when people start talking about the power sector, they talk completely out of ignorance of what has been achieved by this administration in the power sector.
And from what you've been saying, that would also seem to be your opinion about other issues, such as when you started out by saying that you've taken the bottom out of the whole idea of government clamping down on freedom of speech in the public space, social media. NBC is now going to limit the number of phone-ins that are allowed in a program. None of that is actually happened.
No,
this was all creation.
It's creation of the media.
Okay, we'll take a break, Mr. Minister. We'll be right back. Stay with us, please. When we come back, we'll open the phone lines as well. Welcome back. We have the Minister of Information with us, Alhaji Lai Mohammed. Thank you for coming on again, Minister. Let me start off this segment with, we're asking, how is the President? He's back home, everybody's happy, but how is he?
The President is doing very well, and we are happy that he's back, and he's doing what he was elected to do, that is running the government of Nigeria.
In this area in particular, you know, there's also been commentary regarding the then acting president, and now substantively back to his position of vice president, him getting the short end of the stick, him being sidelined, and any general comments on that in terms of the relationship between Mr. President and his vice?
You see, every government must be careful not to be distracted by comments which are largely unfounded, comments which add nothing to the polity, and comments which are generally just meant to slow you down. And that's my position. And there's not every comment
that you want to react to.
Oh, no, I won't react to, frankly speaking.
Well, maybe you react to this. The fact that Mr. President is not in his office because it is being renovated, Mr. President, a lot of people are concerned. That's why I asked, in fact, so how's Mr. President? And he said he's fine. He's not in his office. We hear because of renovation. We hear about rats in Aso Rock. I just had to ask. I had to just clear the air on rats in Aso Rock, keeping Mr. President away from his office.
I think number one is that, you see, the villa is a complex. The villa is just one complex. Anybody has been to the villa. So whether you work from your house or you work from the office, you're still working from the villa. And as a issue of rodents, I think this has been overtaken by events. The Rodent Association of Nigeria, they have, I think they usually rebuttal.
So you don't want to add more than the Rodents Association. Oh, okay. Well, Mr. George, good morning, sir.
Good morning, Uncle Yori.
Thank you for calling in, sir.
Thank you, and good morning to the Honorable Minister.
Good morning.
Uncle Yori, please beg you to give me a little time to say something. There is no absolute freedom in anything. For everything that a person does, there is a responsibility. The fact that you are free to speak doesn't mean that you are free to speak hate. There's a lot of difference between criticizing a government to practicing hate. When a governor sits down to tell people that the president is on life support, when he has no facts to back that, just because he's not in the same political party with the president or he is in opposition, that is no more opposition. That's not criticism. That is hatred. And he has no right to hate another person. Hate itself is a crime. It should not, if it is not allowed in life, it cannot be allowed in politics. So one must draw a line that hatred is not the same thing as criticism. So if the government is saying if you say anything that amounts to hatred, that there is a responsibility for it, I don't think that is wrong. Because if you allow it to continue like this, I don't know what will happen to this country. Secondly, sir, I have been looking for the last time the minister came on air, I was not able to reach him. The observation I have made, I need to let the minister know this. Before the elections, what we knew was that many TV stations and radio stations, people were being paid to come and say certain things on air, either in favor of government or against the government. If you look at all the TV and radio stations today in Nigeria, you see that only TVC allows people to make input when discussions are going on. They don't, they just bring whoever they like to come and say whatever they want to say. And then in the process, either they are inciting people or sending out information that are not true, and then the people absorb it. This is how hatred and all these things are coming about. I want to suggest to the Honorable Minister, is it out of place for you to tell TV houses that where discussion programs are involved, they should give room for people to phone in and participate? That should be self-regulatory.
Thank you very much, Mr. George. Thank you very much for calling in, Mr. George. Mr. Minister, would you like to comment?
No, I think I agree absolutely with Mr. George's, definition of, hate speech and, or rather the distinction between hate speech and freedom of speech, that freedom of speech does not include hate speech. I think I agree with him, and that's exactly what I've been saying. Yeah.
And in terms of screening that Mr. George spoke about, government is concerned, as you were telling me before coming on air, with TV stations, but he said in particular radio stations. Could you explain that a bit?
You see, if you listen to some radio stations, today, you will not believe you are in Nigeria. If you listen to some radio stations, you think we're at war. And it's dangerous because in Rwanda, it took just one radio station to incite people, and 800,000 lives were lost in 100 days. And that constituted 13% of the population of Rwanda then. Mm-hmm. So this is, and you can imagine when you have a population like ours in Nigeria, with all the political, fault lines, then you have a problem. We must discourage hate speech.
Mr. George also at the end spoke about wondering whether you were thinking along the lines of possibly getting stations to screen, but you explained at the top that in a sort of conversation with NBC, that this idea came from media owners themselves.
You see, media owners must meet regularly, and they must agree on a code of conduct that will save them. Like I keep saying, if they don't self-regulate, they will self-destruct. And it will not be from government. It will not be by government. So there's a need for platform owners to ensure that their platforms are not used to destabilize the country. Mm-hmm. That their platforms are not used to cause war. And their platforms are not used to disseminate hate. Because it's precisely because there's a Nigeria, that's a television station operating. And this is the message we've been preaching all along. So I agree with him. Let them do self-censorship themselves. We will not censor them.
Okay.
But if they cross the line, like we said clearly, if you violate the law, especially the Terrorism Act, you will be asked to account for it.
As I have read in papers, some lawyers, some commentators have said that there are actually enough laws on our books to take care of hate speech. Yes. And you are saying that your government has not added any fresh idea in that regard. Mr. Ayo in Oshogbo, good morning.
Good morning, Yori.
Thank you for calling in, sir.
Thanks very much. Actually, I'm not watching the program, but a friend just called me that the Honorable Minister for Information is on the program. That is why I decided to call in and ask a question.
Sure.
I have a question on the anti-corruption fund.
Go ahead.
Hello?
Go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. Honorable Minister, sir, I just want to ask, sir, the EFCC has been discussing the farmhouse, in toilet, and also, and nobody, no single person is being attached to hold this money. Is it a decoy or a way for the government of people who are corrupt return the money to government in another form? It is a decoy, so to say.
Okay, then. Thank you very much, Ayo.
What are the questions?
Well, he said so many, these humongous sums that are reportedly being found and no name is being attached to it. Might it be a ruse for people under suspicion to find a way to return the money to government? It's a ruse whereupon government will look away once they've got their money back.
No, I think I've said it on several platforms also, that government must be very focused on what it intends to achieve. We want to recover stolen loot. That does not mean we're not going to prosecute you. But why must we start, making it impossible for us to collect the money we want to collect? Statute does not run out against any looter. Two, I also explained that there are some people who voluntarily returned the money, explained that they did not know that this money was meant, to prosecute, the Boko Haram insurgents. That they were told they were given this money as campaign funds, and they returned it because they believed that it was unconscionable for them to hold such money. So I think it's by far much more complex than what people are saying, name and shame.
Mm-hmm.
So, and we want to assure Nigerians.
And so government seems to be looking at each case on an individual basis.
Absolutely. And I want to assure Nigerians that our main objective is to ensure that stolen loot are not only returned, but that we make it impossible in future for people to steal from the Commonwealth.
Maybe the follow-up to that in my mind is getting your opinion on how well you think the war against corruption is progressing, seeing as it's a major part of the PMB administration.
It's the most vicious war, because when you fight corruption, corruption will fight you back. And there's so much money out there. All this hate speech, all this fake news is financed by stolen funds. So it's another way of corruption fighting back.
Mm.
And the government must just remain focused. Yes, we know we have a lot of things to do. We need to improve on our prosecution. We need to improve on our, facts gathering. But the truth of the matter is that from time of Cicero, there are always more people against the state than those who are for them. So,
okay. Ebuka in Kaduna, good morning, sir.
Yes, good morning, Uncle Yori.
Thank you for calling in.
And good morning, Mr. Lai Mohammed.
Good morning, Mr. Ebuka.
Yes, thank you. I want to ask you a question. That was last week or thereabouts. It's over the media that the office of the president was infested by rodents. I want to ask you a question. Is it that there is no cause of maintenance why he was away? And because I still find it difficult to believe that the office of...
Ebuka, have you just joined us? Because this matter has been touched. We've spent time on this matter, and as you know, airtime is precious. Maybe you missed it. The minister has actually addressed this point.
My own administrative inefficiency from my own part. So I'm asking the question, why did he not check? Or why did the office not understand why he was away?
Okay.
That's my question.
All right. Thank you very much, Ebuka, for calling in. As you said,
I think I've addressed the issue.
You've actually addressed the issue.
I think I can move on.
You said you're satisfied. Well, I'm assuming that's what your position is, that you are satisfied with the pace of the war against corruption. And because you said corruption is fighting back, you seem to be suggesting, from the way I look at it, that it's tough going, but you're going nevertheless.
Very tough going, yeah. But it's very tough going because all the distractions you are facing, you can trace them to fighting corruption one way or the other.
Okay.
Yes.
It's good you say the president as well. I think I need to also touch on the matter about, we're happy the president is here. Everything is going the way you say it should be going. But there was a lot of confusion as to information. I'm sorry to be raking over old coals. A lot of confusion information-wise, when the president was away, as to the state of his affairs, state of his health, and the fact that it is thought that what's going on, why were we all caught by surprise when the president happily decided to arrive on that Saturday morning? It appeared that very, very few people knew. Now, what's going on there?
You see, what's going on there, and frankly speaking, is that this campaign of hate, this campaign of fake news, and here I think I want to even hold the media responsible. On the 13th of July, somebody said the then acting president is lying to the nation. Mr. President is critically ill. Mr. President cannot even recognize people. Mr. President is on life support. Mr. President cannot come back to Nigeria. On the same day, the same Punch reported another governor saying that he has 11 pictures that he wants to release to Nigerians that would shock them about the state of health of Mr. President. Since then, I've not seen any serious media take on those two individuals to account for the lies, to account for the confusion, to account for the, falsehood they have publicly, disseminated.
Okay.
Two is that I told you the whole idea when the president was away was to saturate the media with irrelevant stories about whether it's doing or not, as opposed to was governance running well or not. The truth was governance was going on. By July this year, our foreign reserve reached an all-high of $31.5 billion from the $23.89 billion which it was in October 2016. Nobody made mention of this. In February this year, the dollar was at parallel market was exchanging for 520 naira. Today, the same dollar is exchanging in parallel market for 360 naira. And this is evidence that the policies put in place by government, these policies are working.
And the media is not highlighting
the media
those
is
things.
highlighting this, no.
Okay, ID in Kaduna, thank you for holding on. Good morning.
Good morning.
Please go ahead, sir.
Good morning to our Honorable Minister.
Good morning.
Uncle, please, I just have 3 questions for the Honorable Minister. Number one question. I want to ask the Minister, is he aware of the President in himself of saying so many things about hate speech when he was looking for this presidency? I could remember.
Well, sorry, you said you have 3 questions. Could you just help us? Go to the second.
Yes.
Second question.
No. I'm just trying to say.
Well, okay, you won't be able to ask more than the one. Finish the first question and we'll take it as one.
Okay. He said, with Hausa, he said, Kerejini, Pirijini. Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. You're on air. Go ahead, please. I think the line has gone bad on you. Okay, pushback, a counter for you there. Are you indeed aware that Mr. President might have actually veered into hate speech on the campaign trail?
I'm not aware, unless you tell me certain quotations that he said.
Unfortunately, we lost him. He was going to elaborate.
And then in what context was it said? I would not. I can't really comment on that.
Okay. Be that as it may, we couldn't get that. But again, it's interesting because when we started this program, as you know, the papers are awash this morning, but you've effectively said that you just don't know where all the clamping down on the public policy. I was going to ask how significant these quote-unquote haters, not that you ever call them that, but, where all this whole big news, how significant is that set? Mr. George called in and spoke about people being sponsored and paid to go on media.
It's a big industry. You see, I raised the first alarm sometimes, I think, in February last year, or April last year, when we were at the town hall meeting in Ilorin.
Mm-hmm.
Then, when I went to the National Defense College, I actually said that hate speech, fake news, is more dangerous than Boko Haram. Then I came to University of Lagos to present a paper during the Oxford, mock exercise of University of Lagos on hate speech. And finally, I went to Jos. We had this extraordinary National Council of Information meeting in Jos in April, and which we now actually said this hate speech thing is becoming an issue. I'm happy that after that, everybody is now talking about hate speech. Now, it's a big industry. And like I said, it's calculated to ensure that nobody sees the good things government has been doing.
Mr. Douglas in Ikeja, you're our last caller. Good morning, sir.
Oh, good morning, Honorable Minister, sir.
Good morning, sir.
It's a pleasure to have the opportunity to phone in on this program. Honorable Minister, I want to congratulate your government for the giant strides you're making, especially in power sector. I am from Enugu State, but I'm in Lagos at the moment. While coming down to Lagos, I saw that work was going on in Enugu on Onitsha Expressway. And as you said, Enugu Port Harcourt also is ongoing. We congratulate your government. But when we come to this power sector, Honorable Minister, as the moderator was telling you about how to translate your work into the layman's life, so that, like in power sector, for instance, you need to intervene in EEDC, which is Enugu Electricity Distribution Company. The disparity between the tariffs that charge the poor people in Enugu State as against Lagos State. Here in Lagos, the tariff is 21.30 naira per kilowatt. But in Enugu, it is 30.93 kilowatts. It's exploitation of the poor people. And secondly, we want to please that the government look into establishing, looking into using coal in Enugu to generate electricity, because when that happens, it will reduce the cost of power.
Okay, Mr. Minister, I beg your pardon. Okay, Mr. Douglas, thank you. So that the Minister can answer the question, I had to interrupt you.
Oh, Mr. Douglas, I spoke to the Honorable Minister of Power Works and Housing this morning, and he assured me that they are trying to license a generating plant that will be using coal very soon. Okay. And two, your complaints about the discriminatory charges in Enugu, yes. I think we should please direct this to the Nigerian Electricity Regulation Commission. But I'm sure Nigerians are hearing you, and I will also pass this over to the Honorable Minister of Power Works and Housing.
Well, I want to thank you, Honorable Minister, for coming on the program and clearing the air. Of course, I'd like to go on, but I was joking that producers are dictators. They just won't allow any leeway. But thank you very much for coming on, clearing the air, and perhaps surprising many by saying that not one word emanated from government about any fresh initiative to clamp down on the media space. But that at the same time you emphasize that freedom of speech is not the same thing as hate speech, and that you probably will be taking a very, very dim view of hate speech.
Yes, we would be. Absolutely. I think you've summed it up, my brother. You have, yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Lai Mohammed, Honorable Minister of Information of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. So that's our program today. Please join us tomorrow for a fresh edition. I'm Yori Folari. Bye-bye for now.